Okay, today's video we're going to talk about can or should I hire for my company. I'm looking to outsource my marketing. Basically have options to do in-house marketing, hire employees for our marketing department, or I can hire outside firm. But more specifically, if I'm hiring an outside firm, should I hire multiple marketing firms that specialize, or should I hire one overall firm that can do everything, maybe understands how things work together, and what are the pros and cons of each of these? Respectively, I will touch a little bit on in-house versus outsourcing of the marketing itself, because obviously if you're watching this video, this is also probably on your mind as well. But I'm going to talk about, the main thing is as you know, if you watch my videos, the misnomers, the pitfalls, all of this stuff when it comes to doing certain things, because if you avoid most of all the stuff that can screw you up, well, you're left with something that will work. Telling you versus the other way around, it's not nearly as effective to go out and do something like PPC, which this channel specializes in teaching people how to do, well, how you should go about doing things. I'll give you or at least both sides of it. That all said, I will get into what kind of inspired me to make this video, what are the pros and cons, respectively, some other need-to-know information, how to go about doing this in the way that you won't basically get screwed over, and if it were my business, what I would be doing. Now, I run a PPC firm here. All we do is PPC, guaranteed PPC. With that, I know it may seem biased if I'm giving you biased information here. I'm telling you information here to help you, because I know if you're helped, you'll come back and ask me for information later. I'm not trying to I don't give a crap if you hire me or not. This is just for informational purposes only. Respectively, you have to ask somebody who's in the marketing space to understand this. If you're not in the space, then you're not going to be able to get a knowledgeable piece of advice here anyway. So anyway, with all that kind of disclaimer said, if you're going to go in-house or hiring an outside firm, by the way, which of those should you do? Respectively, I'll tell you how it works in our industry, like PPC management, which is going to be a little bit more extreme than if you have to hire one firm for outside for everything. After you get to a certain size of company, basically they're making like 20 million a year plus, they have an internal marketing department that they start building up. Now, whereas I don't believe that is the right thing to do until you're like 100 million, for the reasons that if you try hiring internal people, it's to get it done right. The type of person that the lead strategist at a specialized firm is going to be able to get paid, but it's respectively affordable because you're going to get so much of their time versus have to pay for all their time. You're not going to be able to effectively afford that until you're like a pretty good sized company. So, and if they're under 20 million, generally speaking, they'll try to hire an outside firm to do their marketing, because obviously you can't get by with just a PPC person. You generally need a designer, some programmers, whatever. And now you're looking at having, a $20,000, $30,000 a month payroll. Whereas if you're starting out hiring outsourcing, and particularly if you try to do one channel like PPC, you might only have to go in and it might only cost $5,000 to $10,000 between the ad cost and the person. So you get in cheaper, easier, and respectively, let's just say you get your foot in the door that way. You don't have to, also, by the way, this is the thing that really screws people up. You don't have to do all the marketing at once. You can do just PPC, get that to work, and then fill in all the gaps and all the other stuff that you need. Have an internal person try to hold together things like reputation management, but for them, and you may be a designated person that does little one-off things like that. But you absolutely can hire a PPC firm to get you a PPC campaign going, and don't need any other channels. Assuming it's done right, you can walk up a business from 1 to 20 million. Do it all the time here. Not trying to toot my own horn here, but this is regular stuff that we're doing, and we don't need to add in 15 channels or working on SEO and social media management. You can do it really, really well, assuming that channel has the potential to bring a lot of volume, which PPC as a whole does. And so you're better off doing that than everything kind of lukewarm or half-assed, if you just want to call it that. But So respectively, unless you're a huge company already, you're probably going to be better off hiring outside because you can't afford to have an all-star internal management team to do everything for you. Now the question you have to ask yourself then is, as per the topic of this video, do I hire one firm that does all the areas of marketing that I think I need, social media marketing, SEO, reputation management, web design, whatever, landing pages, or do I hire a bunch of specialist firms that do just PPC, just social media management, just email marketing, whatever? Which obviously, as you probably know or have thought about already, is this can really add up the amount of money it costs to outsource everything. Right off the top, I'm just going to, the basic answer to all this is you don't hire a bunch of people to do a bunch of stuff right away. You do one really well, you use the profit from that to bring in other specialists. And eventually, when you are a huge company, you can build an internal team. Still, with the internal team, by the way, that internal person that's supposed to do PPC, they're just not going to have the knowledge of what somebody who works on 30 accounts at any time does. And you may say, well, you don't get the attention. Well, with PPC, it's whether or not you do the right thing and know how to do the right thing and have the bandwidth to do the right thing. Not so much you've got lots of valuable time from somebody who basically is gambling with your money, which is what things come down to. And so anyway, there's always a default desirability for simplicity in all of marketing. One could try to use software even for PPC or other, better yet, no firms at all and try to manage it yourself as the owner. So it's not really about, is it a specialist that I hire or a do-it-all firm for marketing if I'm going to outsource my marketing department. It's, you could go further. In other words, say, I don't even want to hire anybody. I want to try to have a software like Livestream do it, which is, don't do that, by the way. Or I could do it myself. Also, don't do that. I'd recommend you always do it yourself until you've gotten it to where you understand the potential of it. Maybe you've gotten racked up to a $2,000 to $3,000 a month budget. That's the time you should hand it off to the pros, basically, is what I usually tell people. And it is accurate. So you can get in other words, though, you can get as simple as you want here. Simpler doesn't mean better. There's a point in which you have to realize that the bare minimum isn't going to cut it and it is not suitable. So where is the point in which you're investing not too much and you're wasting your time for being a small company and not enough to where basically everything you've invested isn't going to cut it and you've wasted all your time and money as well. And there's a fairly thin line there between the two, which is what I'm going to try to put into frame of reference on the rest of this video. I get lots of people mostly who try to use one firm for everything. Why? Because it'll be easier / cheaper without knowing both sides of the equation. So in other words, ignorance is bliss. The main thing that gets people caught up in getting screwed over by marketing firms is they don't understand marketing well enough to know one scam company from another by talking to the person there and just listening to what they say. Does it sound like BS or not? Okay, and so if you get taken by the slick sounding salesman and you can't tell how deep their knowledge is, then respectively the whole pitch, we'll do it all. It'll only cost you what it will cost to hire that PPC firm over there, and you get all this stuff, and it'll be great because you don't have to worry about nothing. We handle it all. And I see why people get taken in by that, particularly later on as things, maybe you're growing your company, you run out of time, you want to make it quote-unquote easier as well. You don't want to manage multiple people, and obviously if you can hit two birds with one stone, it can be easier to deal and manage your marketing department and have it be cheaper at the same time. A bunch of people will go to that later on, even if they start out with a specialist. So what I'm telling you here is what you need to know to not basically just flat out say it, be ignorant about the situation so you can at least make an informed decision. Whether or not you do whatever you want to do, you do. I'm just trying to give you what advice I would like to have if I were still running an e-commerce business myself, which I did about 10 years ago. And with all that said, a good PPC strategist has all the other stuff in his mind or her mind already, as he's actually all done it before, but wants none of it. And what I mean by that is, if you do hire a specialist, so one of the things that the generalized firms will say, well, those specialist guys or gals, they're only looking through a straw. And how could they understand, what else you need, even if they don't do it, what else they need and how to get the other ancillary things done to your business, which at some point you do need some other stuff than just PPC, for instance, like manage my Google My Business listing, and how they're going to know how to advise you and at the right times and so on and so forth. And they are correct, assuming you're dealing with a PPC person who has no real world experience. Now, I'm not hating on anybody here. I know people don't want to hear this, but how can you be a PPC expert and you've never actually put your own money on the line and ran a campaign for yourself and had to learn the economics of it all the way through at a high level on everything? Only then, and if you've seen it and experienced it yourself, how operations interacts with marketing, all that stuff, when you're doing the PPC, there's a point in which you have to advise that person that you're missing this, and if you don't do this, we can't grow any further, if that person doesn't have all that experience. So the generalized firm beats the specialized firm in that regard, unless the specialized firm has all that other knowledge, but has chosen to specialize so they can tick all the rest of the boxes, i.e. meaning that they have the more in-depth knowledge you need to actually beat the other people you're competing with that also have people who also have more in-depth knowledge, and which if you're competing against somebody who has in-depth knowledge in PPC and somebody who doesn't have it, generally speaking, you lose by default. So again, I'm not trying to plug my own services here, but I've ran my own businesses. I've ran PPC accounts where I've taken percentage of sales. I've also consulted people on other aspects of marketing at the previous firm I worked at, and then 7 years ago started Guarantee PPC. I specialized in PPC because I realized that, generally speaking, most of the marketing was just going to online marketing anyway. SEO was going away, and that all said, respectively, you could do good with PPC and you don't really need too much else, and you can grow a big company. All that other stuff that the do-it-all-yourself firm says they do really wasn't as relevant as it once was, basically there. And PPC was starting to change so fast that unless you stayed on top of it, doing it every day, you literally could not keep it up. And that's certainly the case now. Campaigns that I could stop what I'm doing. 6 months from now, I could start again, and 20% of what I do at any given time is outdated, and so therefore I would throw 20% of my money away because I don't know the most current things that are working the best. And I can test things on certain accounts where I have to, but every test I do gets applied to the other accounts. And so respectively, maybe once in a while you'll have something that's totally new on your account, but 90+% of the time you're using what's tried and true and already been tested on somebody else's account. And so the generalized firms can't do that. The generalized firms will tell you, oh, but we have a specialized PPC person. But they're respectively also don't have, generally speaking, quite as much experience as the specialized firms are going to have in terms of the number of clients. But more so than with that, the PPC firms themselves are going to do everything. If they're the right firm that you're going to hire, the landing pages, the conversion rate optimization, they're going to have experience doing everything in that PPC funnel that you got to build to make money with, at least to do it right. And just only that, and building the entire funnel and those funnels for people to make money. And so in other words, you're getting the experience of a team who does nothing but PPC versus maybe one guy over there that does PPC, but it's really not their focus. It's probably not even his full-time job, but respectively, you get kind of where I'm going there. That all said, there's some pros and cons of each of these I haven't really completely touched on yet that I'll get into now. Pros. It's cheaper, so I'm starting with the obvious. It's cheaper to hire one firm versus several specialist firms because, if you didn't know, a specialist email marketing firm still already any more going to cost $2,000 to $3,000 a month. And so your generalist firm is going to cost you maybe even $10,000 a month if you're on the high end of things, and each specialist firm will cost you $2,000 to $3,000. So you got PPC firm, SEO firm, email marketing firm. You're already up to $10,000. And, so respectively, overall cost will be more if you've hired, just specialist firms to cover all the things that the generalist firms said they would do. Not a huge amount like you would think, but it's obviously certainly there. And I don't bring it up if most people weren't thinking that. I'm talking about the stuff that most people think about and mention here. So to knock the 80% most common stuff, it's technically on paper cheaper, which when you're talking about marketing, you're looking at concepts and on paper. That's the absolute wrong thing to be thinking about. Less admin, I talked about this. Oh, I don't want to manage talking to 3 companies. It's too much time. And it is obviously too much time to do that, particularly when you don't have the marketing background. So now you don't know, as going to the third big one here, who to blame. This person says this person's stuff is off, and then this person says this other person's stuff's off, and you don't know what's what. You can be really in a twisted situation there. If you do know how to judge people's stuff, obviously, respectively, that doesn't become an issue. But if you're not a marketing expert and you didn't get into your business because you knew you were good at sales and marketing, that can be a big issue and does become a big issue. Cons, automatic lack of experience. So, like I said, the generalist firm, they might have the equivalent of one full-time person who has experience in PPC. If you're talking about whether I should outsource my PPC management to a specialist PPC firm or just let the generalist firm do everything, whereas a PPC team has 10 people who only eat, breathe, and live PPC. So who do you think is going to be able to have more overall knowledge of PPC? And if this was something that you could read in a textbook in school and understand, it wouldn't be so important. But the PPC is literally changing every single month. It is hard enough as it is to keep up on it when all I do is PPC. If I had to keep up on PPC and SEO and reputation management and web design standards are always updating, I cannot possibly stay up on all of it the way that I should. And that's primarily, like I said, why I got into specializing in PPC. It's much harder to fire your firm when somebody's doing everything. I'm going to fire the firm that does everything. Now it's like, okay, if they had something there that I can't see, because firms play all kinds of tricks. They will perhaps have some backlinks that they pointed at your site that when you quit, they yank the plug on that. And then now your traffic and your sales go down as soon as you fire this firm. You got to go back to them. You feel stupid and desperate to go back to them, so you don't. Anything's better than feeling like you're desperate. This is what, maybe not you, but this is what other people think. So then they really drill on their next firm or even think the next firm did it. Or maybe you don't know. Now you're really in a situation where you're now screwed because you're going to tell that new firm to change stuff, which you didn't need to change stuff, but they do it just so that they don't think that you're going to fire them. So then that causes even more volatility in your numbers because the algorithms don't like change, and therefore you get more poor results. And then it can cause a spiral down. But respectively, if you just had a PPC firm and you fired them and you had all your other main components obviously managed by other firms, respectively, your whole business is not going to go down in one big shot. Obviously, PPC can be a high percentage of the business coming in, like I said, so I don't want to over-talk myself here, or contradict myself, I should say. But I'm going to feel really, really, I'm going to feel very reluctant to fire a PPC or a marketing firm that does all my marketing, because I don't know how, what they know, proprietary data that they picked up, what I'm not going to have anymore. Respectively, they can take that whole thing to another firm and bolt it on, which is another thing. I don't have to say a specialist firm couldn't do that, but your whole business is not going over there with them in that case. It's just another thing to think about. Firing somebody and replacing somebody just to do my PPC, that's a whole lot better. If you have a generalist firm and you want to go to a specialist firm and piece it out, you just have that specialist firm do just the one thing, and then you have another specialist firm do the other thing, and then you fire the generalist firm. That would be the way that it would transition out of it if you were considering it already. But anyway, you get the point there, much harder to fire. Things change quickly. I already talked about that. Things are changing so fast. Marketing and technology are one and the same now. And you literally cannot keep up with, and I'm not making this up to sell my own services here. You cannot keep up with PPC unless you do it not like as a specialty. You just aren't. And people hire PPC firms because they know they can't keep up on it. They themselves, even though they know their business better and their customers better and what the customers like to hear better, they still won't be as good as the PPC firm. What the best outcome is when that business owner communicates directly with the PPC strategist, and so the information about what the customer wants and what the PPC can do gets attached one-on-one at the head there. That's where I get my best results. So you can't just give it over to the firm and say, okay, there you go. You talk once a month or whatever, and you pass the information over both ways like that, so the PPC specialist can use all that data. Even if they have access to your sales data, it's still not the best, as is knowing, consumer market trends and stuff like that within that industry. And then the last thing is you get a whole team of specialists, not just one. I already talked about this. At the generalist firm, there's not a cohesive team that works on building a PPC funnel from landing page to ad to conversion rate tracking to all of it, just to do one thing, which is to get target numbers from a PPC campaign. You get a bunch of people that may do some aspects of that, but they're not specializing in PPC. And respectively, each traffic source you have, traffic behaves a little bit differently. So if you use the same sales funnel for an email as you do for a Facebook, as you do for a Google Ads campaign, it won't work nearly as good, because people have different expectations of how aggressive that page is. There's different ways in terms of the tracking, how well it works on one channel versus the other. And so you're never really going to get somebody who could definitively probably tell you that I've worked on something almost exactly like this before, and this is what you should expect going in, and have that information be fairly accurate going in. Whereas with a PPC firm that's worked on hundreds of accounts, that if they haven't worked on your exact thing, they've probably worked on something very, very close. So anyway, those are the general pros and cons. Now, what I also see people doing a lot is using specialists for a short time. Let's say they hire the PPC specialist, they took my advice here, and then they say, oh, my generalist firm only charges $6,000 a month, but this PPC specialist over here, they want to charge $3,000 a month just for PPC. What do they think they are? If it makes that much, maybe I should just be a PPC person, not knowing. It's like the whole plumber analogy. It's not about what the plumber does. It's having the 15 years of experience to know exactly where to knock on the pipe to fix it in 2 seconds and without it screwing up every single time. You're buying the knowledge and the experience. You're not buying the work per se, even though the work is important. Got to have both. So they'll hire the specialist because they think it's expensive. They may have a plan going in to just kick the specialist firm out after a while, what I call showing them the way. Build something up. I know you're 10 times better than this generalist firm at this PPC, but just do it. I won't tell you that I'm going to use you in like a used bloody tampon here and then switch over and give this your campaign you built for me here to the generalist firm to take over. But they're thinking it ahead of time usually, or they eventually just get tired of paying. They get resentful is the word, that they're paying so much just for PPC, even though they don't realize that specialized PPC knowledge is hugely, hugely valuable if you just used it and that didn't look at proportions between one budget versus another. You looked at the overall results, which you should do, and if the results are not there, that's another thing. Hang on. So they'll use you for a while and then cut you for whether they had it planned or not. And then what happens is this do it all firm, this generalist firm that does everything, that says, yeah, we can do PPC too. They don't understand the strategy that you use because they don't have the knowledge you do in terms of the in-depth PPC knowledge. So they look at it and they can't tell what you did and why you did it by looking at the account. And guess what? If you come to me, I'll just tell you flat out and say, tell the new guys exactly what you did and why. I'm going to say, why should I? Or if you want me to do that, you pay me extra, because that's going to be a lot of work to explain it at a detailed level. We're talking about 10, 20 hours of work, detailing everything. And so, of course, most people just aren't going to do that if you ask them. And so you've got this, blank account pretty much that you don't understand what's there and why. And then now your changes are going to go on top of what's the generalized firm's changes are going to go on top of that PPC firm's campaigns, and it's going to start to interfere with one another. Why? Because they don't understand what was there. It's almost like a good equivalent is a computer programmer. If a computer programmer goes into a site and writes code and doesn't understand good coding writing practices, they will screw up good code with bad code, even though they didn't even touch that good code a lot of times. And they'll break something, or they write really bad code and you expect someone good to come in and fix it after. Not knowing what the bad person did, it'll cause even more havoc. So respectively, you may have a chance switching over from one good coder to another good coder because they understand how to read notes and why things happen the way they do. If you're switching from good to bad and then perhaps to good again, things are just naturally going to get screwed up. I mean, it only makes logical sense here. So they don't understand what they did, and then they start adding their changes to look like they're busy, because the people who don't know what they're doing, their key thing is to do anything the client asks of them so that the client stays happy, which you should do the minimal changes necessary and tell the client, no, that doesn't work, if they tell you something that doesn't work, which these people aren't going to do. So they're making up for their lack of knowledge with seeming cordial and friendly. Then it'll start to slowly derail what you got. It might have took a year or 2 years to build up a really good account with that specialized PPC firm, and then all the results get unraveled over time with the more changes they overlay with what they got, and not intentionally but accidentally. With it all screwed up, if you go back, let's say 6 months into it, with the generalized firm of what they've taken over from the specialized firm, they realize that they want to unravel it, and you say, just do what the other firm did. Undo it all. Undoing these changes is way harder than you think. If you're thinking that you're just going to go and hit the reset button, like this is a video game, it's not going to happen like that. A lot of the stuff you can't directly undo using change history menu and clicking undo. A lot of it you'll have to go through that change history menu and physically, manually change everything. But even if you do that, what you're losing is the algorithm and the history of the ads that were run. The reason why it takes so much time to get results in the first place is because the history, the ad algorithm has to learn how to run your ads the way that it is the most ideal way of running your ads. Just because you're bidding on red shoes doesn't mean you're showing up for every person that searches for red shoes. The algorithm that Google has is trying to determine if all the people that search for red shoes, if they're high school graduates, how does that affect the conversion rate on this guy's ad over here versus not? And they've got millions of traits on all their users stored in a database, and they're tracking every user's actions. And the really good results don't come in, even if you have amazing campaigns, until the algorithms had time to analyze all your ads at a fairly decent level to recognize that the click-through rates are better than average of what's there, the conversion rates are better than average, reduce your cost per conversion, and also filter out some of the bad traffic that was providing no results. All that comes together to get really good results. You're thinking, oh, we got great results now. It's been 18 months. We'll just give this to the general firm. They go ahead and change everything. Respectively, it'll be 6 months to if you tell them, okay, it goes bad, undo everything. It'll be 6 months once they undo everything before the algorithm figures out how to rerun the ads again. So can you take a 6 months hit on your revenue? Would have been a lot cheaper than just paying the PPC firm to keep, lock in your results. But with that said, the PPC firm, you look at overall results. What's the ROI on their time? Don't think about, oh, it just sounds like a lot. I hate paying so much. Think about what you're getting. And eventually the results will plateau out from your campaigns. But it doesn't mean you should throw away what you've got locked in. You can use them in partnership with other specialists that are not trying to take each other's business. They're trying to work together, because if you're more successful, you'll want to keep them individually on longer. Whereas the general firm is thinking, they can never fire us because it would be too hard. That's what they're generally thinking. So my advice to the public is this, to boil it down, or if you're going to take anything major away, pick one thing marketing-wise and start doing it well, or as best as you can. Instead of doing 5 different marketing tasks or things, channels of traffic, whatever. Pick one and do it so well that you know you're doing it better. Not only that other people in your market are already making money from it, which is not easy, hard to tell with PPC obviously, and that you're doing it better than anybody else in that space. So you've got something that has to work. And obviously if you're going to compete at that level, you can't just do anything. You got to figure out how to have a better execution and strategy. And where's that going to come from? Obviously if they're using specialists, it has to be a specialist. And then if the specialist is a lot, well, it is what it is. You may not get quite the return you want after paying for the specialist. The biggest thing is, yes, if you're spending $3,000 a month on ads, spending $3,000 a month on a specialist, a PPC specialist, is going to suck because it seems like a lot in comparison to the ads, and people really get taken back by that. But eventually, you'll spend $20,000 a month, and that it's going to be lopsided like that, generally speaking, at the beginning. But doesn't mean the overall return is going to be there. It also obviously takes a few months to get some traction for the reasons I said, and with the algorithm and so forth. So don't look at it as, if I need to reach, in 1 month, this is all the return I'm going to get. Usually it will take 6 months before your return really starts kicking in. And the big money don't come there for 2 to 3 years after this thing is really built up. They've made one campaign type work, and then they transferred that to building another campaign type, and so on and so forth. And really, that's the way it always works here, generally speaking, unless you have a really fantastic product that everybody wants already, then it's a little bit easier. But in other words, do one thing and do it right. Don't do a bunch of things half-assed. And it all comes down to outcompeting the others. Google Ads is priced to market. There's only 20% or so of the market making money. If you're not going to be able to be in that 20% in terms of how well you're serving the user, which is what makes Google want to reward you with the best customers for the lowest price, enough to where it actually probably gets you a 8-to-1 return or 10-to-1 return, then you're best off not doing it at all, because that's generally what it takes. Okay, it's going to take, and even if you do have the best campaign, it's going to take a few months to have the algorithm realize and adjust what you have a little bit to actually see a good return on top of everything else. So just don't do it unless you have the money to put it to do it right, and avoid shiny object syndrome given by primarily other firms. So to seal this up here, one of the other things is, I'll get great results for a firm. What happens is all kinds of other marketing people in our field are pecking at them, sending an email, "Oh, what you're doing is garbage. We can do it better. We can do it cheaper." And then most people aren't going to fall for that. But after you've heard it 50,000 times from all these spammers, some people, they just can't take it anymore. It's too tempting. And then they switch, and then they find out the hard way. Just because I make it look easy doesn't mean anybody you hire, it's going to be just as easy, and therefore they're charging less, so therefore that has to be the way to go about it. 9 out of 10 PPC firms you hire aren't going to get you results. And that is shown just by the amount of people who actually make good money with PPC, like I talked about. There can only be so many winners. The winners are going to be the ones doing it better than anybody else. So, respectively, if it's working, if it's not broken, don't fix it. That definitely applies here. And then on the flip side, the other, stream of information, bad information, I would say, that would get you to second guess yourself and chase the next shiny thing that, PPC was working, I wonder if email works. Your PPC guy can tell you how good PPC works and how to work with somebody and recommend somebody that's good with email that's not them. And that would be how I would go to the next thing. But I would make sure that, the returns are, not there we can't get any more returns with PPC. Then I would ask them how we can help on different channels. That's the proper way to go about it. But the generalized firm, they are going to say, "Why are you paying $3,000 a month to this other PPC firm? It's all they do is PPC. We can easily add PPC to what you're doing. We won't even charge you anything for 6 months." And you're thinking, $3,000 a month. I can go and get a Ferrari payment for that. And then it's very, very tempting or seductive to think, because when things are going good, you never think something bad's going to happen. And if you've never switched firms, and you've never seen a holy hell type of situation, it's hard to imagine that will happen. That's the standard, not the exception. So if you have something that's working, and you do want to try something else, that's great. Get your person that's gotten you the results to work with another person. Don't just pull the rug out from them and expect the other person telling you that you're paying too much has your best interest in mind. So anyway, that's the whole thing in general. I have a ton of other videos on this channel about other PPC money-making strategies. If you haven't seen any of my other videos yet, you definitely should. I have a blog at guaranteeppc.com/blog with step-by-step instructions on how to build campaigns that are guaranteed to get results. The way I build them for our clients here, have to guarantee the results. You can find that information there if you so please. If you have any questions about should I hire a specialist or generalized firm or the differences between the two, go ahead and leave me a comment down below. Anything you think I should have covered or didn't, whatever. I get back to every single person who leaves me a comment on this channel within a day or two. Apart from all that, I hope you enjoyed, and I do hope to see you on my next one that'll come out here, the next video in a day or two.